Good afternoon. It is Thursday afternoon, July 23rd. This is the afternoon update on the tropics. As always, these thoughts are mine alone, and I'm making decisions regarding Gonzalo, Tropical Depression 8, and Hurricane Douglas, which is off the screen here. Please refer to the National Hurricane Center, your local National Weather Service offices, and your local officials for all decision-making information that you need. We're going to start with Douglas out in the Eastern Pacific. This is a perspective view showing Hawaii here in the top left corner. You can see Douglas here. This is a very powerful hurricane now. This is a high-end Category 3 hurricane with winds of 125 miles per hour. This is likely peaking right now due to cooler waters that are just beyond the mark where the center is right now, and this will be tracking west-northwestward rather quickly here. You can see on the 5-day forecast that this approaches Hawaii very fast and likely remains a hurricane right up until it passes through Hawaii before weakening. If you're in Hawaii, the threats are mainly very strong winds and high surf and heavy rainfall due to the storm. Please refer to the National Weather Service in Honolulu for all the latest regarding this storm. All right, next, got Gonzalo here. Gonzalo, just before the sunset, you can see that convection is refiring. The storm took a significant hit in the yesterday in the core due to dry air that had entrained itself into the circulation, which made the storm look very disheveled today and briefly exposed the at least part of the lower level circulation. You can see that here before it gets covered up by upper cirrus from this new convective burst. The storm is restructuring right now. This is going to take some time due to how much of an impact the dry air had. This is still small, so it can rebound a little bit back into possibly a hurricane. You can see if you look at the storm, this is the storm here, right here. But if you look immediately to the west, you can see that it is entering a much drier environment right here. This is going to gradually be pushing the wind vector is going to, the wind shear vector is going to turn to the west, or turn to being out of the west, and this will likely entrain more dry air into the system. If you look at the GFS model here, the moisture field that Gonzalo really is embedded in is still there in 42 hours, but you can tell that the GFS does have this maintaining intensity at least. This will be continuing to take shots of dry air because the dry air is so close to the overall circulation, which is, you can see how close the dry air is, and that is destined to happen really. Mid-level dry air will get into the circulation periodically, and the storm will have to filter it out, and this may damage the storm and prevent the storm from really strengthening into a very powerful system. You can see that the storm passes through the central Leeward Islands here and then weakens because shear accelerates. If you look at the area average sounding here, you can see that the shear is at 16 knots. This is because the flow and the lower levels of the atmosphere is very quick out of the east, and then you have flow that is very stagnant in the upper levels as you continue to go up with height in the atmosphere, which in turn creates a drag that will shear the system and will likely tilt the system with height, which will in turn gradually weaken the storm, and it may not survive the Eastern Caribbean, but dry air will continue to be present throughout the storm's life. So I am very cautious in saying that the storm may or may not survive the Eastern Caribbean at this point. Regardless, bottom line, there are hurricane watches in effect for Barbados and the Central Leeward Islands. This does bear very close watching, and it is only a few days away now from impacting these areas. So if you are in these areas, you do need to be monitoring the progress of this storm as it may affect you. within the next few days. Okay, now let's get into Tropical Depression 8. Here is Tropical Depression 8. Let's actually get into the water vapor loop first here. You can see Tropical Depression 8 has improved significantly in its overall convective presentation here. You can see very, very healthy outflow expanding out of the northern part of the system, and now in the southern part you have outflow expanding actually in all quadrants of the system, and intense convection has maintained itself almost the entire day, and this is a increasingly worrisome look that we can see. If you look at the mesosector here, you can kind of tell that the storm's lower level circulation is on the northwestern or northeastern side of this large convective mass that is now banding. This is a broad convective band that is really wrapping around here and is going to gradually tighten as time moves on. And what has essentially been happening today is the mid-level circulation was a little displaced to the west because the lower level circulation was more like over here earlier today. That has changed, and now the mid-level circulation is probably closer aligned with the lower level circulation. And as this coupling completes, the formation of an inner core seems more likely at this point, and so the storm may be able to intensify at a higher rate than it currently is. If you look at the infrared loop, you can see that convection has not really died down at all today, which is what was not really expected too much. The storm was able to, surprisingly able to maintain convection rather than have kind of waxing and waning convective bursts here. And the storm has probably become a tropical storm. Recon will be in there within the next hour, but what Recon essentially found today was that the storm was tightening kind of gradually, and the models, intensity models specifically, have gradually caught on to this happening. The H-Wharf model, which actually has probably undersampled this a little bit, because you can see that the storm is still very broad on the H-Wharf. This probably is not the case anymore, and so it may be actually a little stronger in here. And I'm going to sample the environment here. The environment around this storm is extremely favorable for intensification. You can see the shear is very, very low. The flow is almost uniform, and the relative humidity values are 83%, which is perfect, essentially. And if this storm is able to tighten up an inner core and have a well-defined inner core structure sooner, then it may be able to deepen faster. And if actually, I'm going to look at the more high-res H-Wharf model here and get the radar going. And you can see that the H-Wharf model actually intensifies this into a mid-grade tropical storm and actually gets it all the way down to 989 millibars before impacting the just north of Rockport, where Harvey made landfall in 2017. And other intensity models, such as the HMON, actually deepen this a little bit further and take it a little further to the south. One thing to note is that if the storm is going to be, I'm going to go back to the parent model here and show you that if the storm is able to deepen significantly, it will start to feel the weaker flow that is from the upper levels of the atmosphere. If it is able to deepen into a high-end tropical storm or a hurricane, maybe, it will feel the upper levels of the atmosphere, which are right here, and you can see that the flow is weaker. This is only like 5 knots to almost 0 knots here, versus flow from the lower levels of the atmosphere, which is around 10 knots here, which overall means that the storm will likely slow down on approach to the Texas coast. Especially if it is stronger, this will likely slow significantly, and If the storm is stronger, it may go further to the south due to an upper level ridge that will be over it, that will be intensifying or deepening as the storm is approaching the Texas coast. So, bottom line, if you are in the Matagorda Bay area, stretching all the way down into the Kennedy County area, here you need to be watching this very, very closely. Bottom line, regardless of whether or not this storm does intensify to what may be hurricane status, the National Hurricane Center officially has it intensifying into a 60-mile-per-hour tropical storm. But if you are in the south central Texas coastline, you need to be watching this very closely. This will be bringing, regardless of whether or not it intensifies, will be bringing heavy rain and rough surf to the entire Texas coast, stretching all the way up into Port Arthur. As you can see, the storm is pretty large and will may be bringing some storm surge in here. We'll have more details on that probably tomorrow, as we'll probably be able to check out the overall inner core structure of this system and see if it will be as well defined as it may be tomorrow. Regardless, please refer to the National Weather Service in Houston and National Weather Service in Corpus Christi. I will link both of those below. And as always, have a good night and stay safe. Thanks for watching.